Welcome to Municipal Affairs Year in Review. Today we're reflecting on a year that has been as challenging as transformative for municipalities across this great country. This past year, our cities, towns, villages, and rural communities have been at the forefront of some of the most pressing issues of our time. From navigating the financial ripple effects of economic uncertainty to embracing innovation in infrastructure and housing. All the while, local governments have proven that they are more than just the closest to the people, they are the problem solvers, the innovators, and often the ones who make things happen, even when higher levels of government fall short. And joining me today to look back at 2024 in the province of Saskatchewan is the president of the Saskatchewan Urban Municipalities Association, Randy Goulden. Are you passionate about local governance and municipal issues? Do you believe in the power of community-driven conversations? Then join us at the Cross Border Network, where we bring together voices from across Canada to shine a spotlight on the challenges and the triumphs of our municipalities. But we need your support to keep the conversation going. Visit crossborderinterviews.ca today to show your support by backing the show monthly or making a one-time annual donation. Your contribution will help us grow and expand our reach, bringing important stories to even more listeners across the nation. Together, we can make a difference. Together, we can amplify the voices of local communities. Together, we can shape a brighter future for all. Cross Border Network, where local matters and your support counts. Visit us today at crossborderinterviews.ca. President Goulden, thank you so much for sitting down with me and looking back on the year that was and looking forward to the year that will be, and that is 2024 and 2025. I want to start by looking back at the last 12 months in Saskatchewan, if you don't mind, and ask you a simple question. At the end of 2024, how would you describe the state of municipalities in the province of Saskatchewan?
Well, first of all, let me say I can't believe we're coming to the end of 2024. It just has seemed to pass so quickly, as time does as we say, time does fly. But as I look back, on some of the things that we've seen going on in our province, in our municipalities, I'd have to say it's a view of it's optimistic. There's new elected officials coming on because, as you know, we have in just a few weeks, we went through a provincial election and then a municipal election. And there's always talk about a federal election, like throw that in. But what I'm seeing is, we have experienced councillors that are still, that were still elected. We have some new elected people, mayors and councillors coming in across the province, which brings that enthusiastic, those new innovative ideas, and mixed with, the experience that we have. And then everything that happened around our provincial election. Obviously, some changes happened. We're seeing some shifts in where our cabinet ministers are coming from. And it's just, to me, optimistic. So I know the SUMA board and our team at the SUMA office are looking forward to hitting the ground running with the people that we're going to be working with.
I want to start by talking about a little bit about the year that was for SUMA, because SUMA has gone through a transformative 2024 with the kickoff of their governance changes that were launched at the convention in Regina. At the end of 2024 and a few months before the next convention in Saskatoon, how were those changes going? And are you on pace to properly roll them out in 2025?
Well, Chris, and thank you for joining us at our convention in Regina in April this year. And what you saw there was a culmination of 2.5 years of work for our board, our administration, in really engaging with our members. And I think that has been unprecedented engagement that we had, and really understanding what our members wanted to see from SUMA as we move forward. Our SUMA has been around. We're going to be celebrating, our 120th anniversary coming up this year, and taking a good look at definitely the history where we've come from, and currently where are we, and where do our members see us going on their behalf. And traveling across this province, meeting with our members in their hometowns, and understanding, their priorities, their challenges, but looking forward to how to make our communities the very best we can was, I think, very good for SUMA. We had much engagement and saw at the convention an overwhelming support for moving forward. And really then having our members through our caucus model that we adopted and approved, being able to speak the advocacy things that they want to hear, go directly, to our provincial government. So it's pretty exciting, and it was almost a little overwhelming for us when we saw the vote come through.
So are you on schedule to make those official changes by 2025? I know I was speaking to your CAO, John Mark Nadeau, earlier this year, and he said the process is still ongoing. It's ramping up. Do you get a sense that you're ready to hit the ground running in 2025 around the governance changes and setting up those caucuses?
So we are very well positioned to do that. And of course, there was, that pause
Yeah.
during the municipal elections that we saw. Now that we have those councils in place, we're going forward to form the caucuses. That's going to happen. The votes are going to be coming in January and mid-February, and then all leading up to our convention in April. We'll have the election of the president, and then we will also have, the elections of the chairs of those caucuses, which will ultimately form our board of directors. And then right after that, so we're already planning for what comes after that. We're planning, and the process is going into play on, the strategic planning that has to happen, the implementation of that, the business plan that has to happen. So boy, are we working on that. Yeah.
Looking back on the last 12 months, you talk about what you heard at that convention. I had the pleasure to tour Saskatchewan a little bit during the provincial election and also speaking to your members directly. And they talked about a range of issues that were facing their
Mhm.
unique communities. From SUMA's perspective, what was the biggest challenge municipalities faced in 2024?
I think one of the things that we're seeing coming out of the pandemic, and where there were so many pauses, and the budgets that we still had to maintain without some of the revenues coming in. From what I'm hearing, we need to continue our advocacy, our strong advocacy, to really take a look at the roles, the responsibilities of municipalities, and coming out of that, how do we fund that? What I'm hearing, and now as our members are going into budget, are the infrastructure deficit is still very much on everyone's minds. We need to continue to do that. And the concerns around, mental health and the addictions, and how do we deal with that? We work closely with our provincial government, and understanding, the role that we play in that. That is definitely responsibility of the provincial government getting funding from the federal government, but yet those challenges are happening on our streets, in our businesses, to the people that live in our communities. So understanding how we're going to deal with that too. And it all comes down to funding and funding levels. And as you know, and you've heard, our funding model that we have been working with since Confederation was basically, came about during the time of, Queen Victoria. And that's where that was set, that model. And we're still working with that. And, I always say to people, so imagine the needs that our residents of those days would have had with roads and street and water and sewer and recreation opportunities to what they are now, and the costs now. So, we need to work with those other orders of government to really establish what is our role and how do we pay for it. And those are the things that I'm hearing from our municipalities. I hear too the concerns around, healthcare. There again, is that our responsibility? But it's happening in our municipalities. So, when we get those caucuses together, when we start doing our strategic planning, that's where all those things are really going to be brought to the forefront so that we understand the needs, the challenges, so we can make certain that our advocacy is as appropriate as can be.
This year, we talked about it at the beginning of the episode, the interview, I should say, and we talked about the provincial election. We talked about the municipal election. With those concerns that you just raised and talked about in that last statement, do you feel like the current government heard municipal issues this year in 2024? I know it's an election year, so they're going to probably be listening a little bit more closely than normal years. But do you feel like this government, Scott Moe and the Saskatchewan Party's government, heard the issues that municipalities are dealing with and they're willing to work with municipalities going forward?
Well, first of all, we heard that from our premier, Mr. Moe, on the election night, having coming to the microphone after the election results, and he said he heard the electorate. There's needs that have to be met. He heard us, and there was some vote for change, and that's what he understood, and that's where he was going to go. SUMA had worked very, very hard with our members, starting in the spring, talking about municipalities, and we brought about the We Are Urban campaign. And it was very much grassroots driven, very much, whether it was our billboards, our social media, our ads that went on, bringing the awareness of what we do in municipalities, not just to provincial government, but to our residents. So, and so they understood when those provincial campaigns were going on and the candidates were door knocking, talk about, hey, our swimming pool needs a retrofit, or our rink, we need new boards and new lights. What are you going to do about that? Healthcare, we're struggling, but yet that's the role of provincial government. So how are you going to help us? So we really think that the candidates and the elected representatives, now the MLAs, we're hearing some of that. So Chris, just because the elections are over does not mean we're going to stop that campaign. Actually, we're going to be looking at ramping that up. That's going to be a continuum, that when we speak about we are urbans. And this is where the economic drivers of this province are. We need to work together because there's concerns out here. And I truly believe we have all new ministers and all portfolios. Premier Moe really shifted things around. And we've had some meetings already with ministers, and we will continue to have that, and with the Premier himself.
Looking back on the last 12 months, we talk about the challenges, but what were the accomplishments in your mind? Was there a policy area or initiative that SUMA put forward that you were happy that it got heard and got discussed and got solved in 2024, or that you moved a little bit further on so that in 2025 it's not going to be as bad of a sort of pickup?
Well, I would say now this was a campaign promise, and that's something SUMA has been working on very hard, and especially ramped up after the pandemic, and that's around municipal bylaw enforcement. Because right now, municipalities, we are tasked, that's our responsibility, to keep our residents safe when it comes around municipal bylaws. So whether it's graffiti or whether it's barking dogs, and dangerous dog situation. And, it was interesting, my last tour in regional meetings around the province, 5 out of the 7 regional meetings I went to, concerns around dogs and dangerous dogs came up at every one of those meetings. So the municipalities have limited ways that we can deal with that. And then if it gets, we do the enforcement around it, it actually ultimately ends up in provincial court. So a couple things with that, provincial courts are really backed up And judges, are dealing with criminal acts, and are they as apt to be looking at, some issues around a municipal bylaw? So we had been advocating that the province should go to, a process like the Kindersley model, where it's a municipal court that would be adjudicating those bylaws. So in August, the then Minister Eyre, had included that's where they were going to go. So that is one thing that's top of the list for us to pursue now, because that's what the SAS party said was going to be on their agenda. So we're going to be pursuing that. But we call that a win, Chris.
What issue are you trying to solve? Is it just the backlog of provincial judicial sort of stalling that is there, or is it the municipalities wanting to actually address local issues at a local level in the local community? Because sending a dog complaint to a provincial court to me just seems like bonkers, and it just doesn't seem like it would be the right thing to do. What was the municipalities trying to solve, and do you think at the end of 2024, it has been solved to the satisfaction of all municipalities?
Well, it has not been solved yet, but both the
Yeah.
things you said is what we're trying to deal with, along with the costs. Because if a municipality sends that to a provincial court, there's a cost to that, a very high cost. There's a time delay, then there's the cost. And quite frankly, if the fine for whatever offense, whatever bylaw is going to court is $100, but it's costing you $500 to get it adjudicated, does that make sense to the municipality? So those are the things we're trying to solve. So we need to put some real, meat, I guess we could say, to sending it to enforcement. Because right now, if it's an offense we're dealing with, the offender, or the potential offender, really understands he can just sit on it. They don't have to do anything. And that's what's happening in our municipalities.
You talk
There's
about
one
the
other thing,
oh,
for instance, like if there's what we could do with some of those fines to make it receiving payment on them, is allowing municipalities to put that onto the property tax. Because right now it's very limited to what you can do with that. So if the fines aren't paid, if they can put it onto the property tax, um, that's making it more collectible for the municipalities.
looking towards the future now, if you don't mind for a few minutes, I want to talk about
Mhm.
2025. What is the thing that you want to get accomplished in 2025? We talked about infrastructure, we talked about challenges that municipality faces, but I want to sort of point this in two directions. From a SUMA's perspective, what do you hope to get accomplished? And then from a member's perspective, what do you want to get accomplished? And I know those might be somewhat related, but I don't think they are mutually line up. So from your perspective, from a SUMA's perspective, what's the one area that you're hoping to get accomplished in 2025?
For us to be successful in the work that we do, we need to have good relationships. And I think from SUMA's perspective, we've had that. We know that we have all new ministers. We have some consistency in our premier right now. He's continued in that role, but we need to build those relationships. We need to also build the relationship with the opposition party and the members that they have. As you know, the opposition has grown, there's new members. So we need to make certain that we have those relationships, and we also have good understanding throughout, because we do have new MLAs. Some are now ministers. In the opposition, they all have shadow roles to do on their portfolios. So we need to have a good understanding of who we are and what we do. And they may not be mutually, the same, but it all rolls into the advocacy that we're going to do, because our main role with SUMA is advocacy. And if we're going to continue with that, we need to have that relationship building, and an understand.
Do you feel like the doors are always open to SUMA for this new provincial government? Because while you're talking about municipal leaders being reelected, and there was a relatively high turnover rate for some municipalities, there was a high turnover rate for cabinet, and there's a lot of new cabinet ministers. So you're basically trying to catch up at the exact same speed. Municipalities are trying to catch up on their issues, provincial cabinet ministers are trying to catch up on them. Do you feel like it's gonna happen in a quick manner? Because the issues are pressing today, not 12 months from now, but the issues needs to be solved today. Do you think you can do it?
Well, we're sure going to try hard. We have things planned already for January, very beginning of January, that I will be along with our CEO, Jean-Marc. We will be going into northern Saskatchewan. Because of course we have members there. We have 24 members through the northern municipalities. We will be both going up there early January to meet because there has been a real turnover in leadership there, and we're going to be doing that right away while we're up there. We hope to meet, with the new mayor of Prince Albert, and also that's the home riding of our new government relations minister. So I was just on the phone today to try to make all that work. And do I think the door is open? Absolutely. And it's up to us to walk through that door and take a look at not just what our needs are, Chris, but how we can work together on the platforms that we heard in the provincial government, both from the SAS party and from the NDP. And how do we bring that together? Because I truly believe that SUMA is a bridge to bring those things together. And I also, in my heart, truly believe that both the parties want the very best for the province. And how can we bring them all together? We're looking at having meetings with our city mayor's caucus. And as you know, there's been a very high turnover there. Those new city mayors, as my city mayor in Yorkton, they've got they're busy. There's so many things that they need to adjust to and learn. Budgets have to be done, all those things. So I see SUMA as bringing them together, in the first quarter of the new year to see where do we go with the cities. As you know, there's been changes with the provincial government MLAs in those cities, Regina and Saskatoon. How best can we work together to bring the concerns together, and not just to bring the concerns together, but bring solutions. I know that we hear from all our cities and the struggles around, people that are unhoused, that the housing is a real issue. How can we deal with that? Where can we help with that? In my city, housing is an issue. We have a lot of construction going on. That construction is wonderful for our city because we are a real player, not just in East Central Saskatchewan, but food production in all of Saskatchewan. And as the construction period is happening here, it's the housing issue, but it's also accommodation in our hotels. Because they're taking space now that visitors and teams can't have. How are we going to deal with all that? Because we don't want to put a no vacancy anywhere in our city or in other communities across the province.
If there's one thing I know about cities in Saskatchewan is the chair of that group, Gerald Albers of Lloydminster, will do a fantastic job ensuring that city issues are heard on a provincial wide scale. So
Yeah.
I wish him the best of luck with the new crop of incoming mayors, some new, some moving up from councillors to mayors, and some just re-elected. So I wish them all the best. Um, I want to go back to the sort of the flip question. And if I gave you a magic wand, and I've asked this to all the presidents, they always laugh at it. But if I gave you a magic wand to solve one issue from a municipal perspective,
Mhm.
and you could wave it, and then at the end of 2025 and said, Chris, thank you so much for that magic wand. We were able to solve this issue. What would that issue be?
So I just get one wish, Chris,
One wish.
with my magic wand. Well, coming off a capital budget last night for the city of Yorkton with our council administration, that wish would be that we could really narrow that infrastructure deficit. Really narrow, and I'm talking linear assets, the streets, the roads, the water, but also those quality of life things that that really make our residents, thrive in our communities, provide them opportunities to get really good physical activity so that their health can be better. Because right now we're having to make those tough decisions, and I'm hearing that right across the province. Do you fix your water main that could blow up at any time, or do you fix your rink? Which is a hub of activity? Or do you put some more dollars into your library? Those are the kind of questions. And I know sometimes people think of infrastructure as those linears, but it's also all our quality of life assets that we have in our communities, because that's what helps, build our pride in our communities. And I really see if we could really narrow the gap that we all have, that would really help everybody. So as when I talk about infrastructure here in my community to my family or friends, they're kind of getting it more now. They understand how that impacts everything else we do in our cities and communities.
So, besides the fiscal framework that FCM has been calling for, a new fiscal framework for municipalities, which your premier and Premier Canoe have both agreed that they were willing to sit down, which is great. Those are the two that I know on the record. There might be others, but I've not been able to find any information if they have or not. So that could be corrected. If you do know that, please let me know, and I will happily correct myself. But what is the magic bullet to solve that issue? Is it the provincial government just basically increasing that portion of the PST to municipalities? Is there a grant that they could be laying out? What are you looking for from the provincial government to help solve that magic wand issue? Because I jokingly said magic wand, but there's if I've ever talked to a municipal leader who has never said told me, if you come to me with a problem, come to me with a solution and we'll work together. You're telling me that infrastructure, linear assessments are the big thing that, and the quality of life are the big issue that you want to magically wave and get fixed in 2025. What's the solution?
Well, I think the solution is in Saskatchewan. We're very fortunate to have that revenue sharing program that we have.
Which you are the
But
envy,
yes,
I say this respectfully,
yeah.
envy of most provinces in Canada when it comes to revenue sharing, just FYI.
Absolutely. And because I do sit on the Federation of Canadian Municipality Boards, have done presentations to the full board about that. We are the envy, and there's one close to it in Quebec, but not exactly what we have. But really, because it's sustainable and it's predictable, so we know what's going to be coming. We know 2 years in advance what we're going to have in the next budget, so we can plan around that. Definitely that PST on the construction portion of labor, the labor portion on construction projects is hitting us hard, because
Yeah.
as we need to improve our infrastructure, that's taking a lot of money that we could be putting back into it. So that's one piece of it. But I think we have to have an understanding that here in our municipalities, we have 60% of the infrastructure. And I know you've heard this before, Chris, and we get 8 to 10 cents of every dollar of taxation. So we would like to see that improved, but we need to know what's coming so we can plan, because as you know, infrastructure programs need to be shovel ready. You need to have those engineered designs. So there's a couple things. Do we actually have to have those engineered designs go through a whole adjudication process only to find out that we weren't approved? And then those engineered designs sit on the shelf until maybe there's another program and we have to redo it because now it's out of date. So I think we need to look at more appropriate ways of doing that. And those are the discussions we have to have. Is that a model like what we have with the Canada Build program, the old gas tax, where there's, an appropriate amount going to by population or however else you want to do that into each municipality, so you're going to get that. You can plan for those infrastructure projects that have to happen, because you can't just make an infrastructure program happen next week, right? And if there's a challenge around that, Chris, when it comes to new elected officials, and I've seen it in my own city, there's frustration around, well, we're going to bring something to the table, but it could be 2 to 3 years or longer before you actually see it happen. So some of my thoughts.
Oh, I love it. Well, that's why you're the president. You can give your thoughts and people listen to you. My last question, and it's about 2025. We talked about how you were optimistic at the end of 2024. What's your hope for 2025? What's your vision for 2025 for municipalities? Will you still be optimistic, or at the end of 2025, will you be hopefully singing something a little bit more pessimistic or more happy along the optimistic route?
Well, Chris, you know me well, and I think you almost know the answer to that question you just asked me. I want to look in a favorable light to everything that's going to happen. Um, we know that there's going to be a federal election. We just don't know when it's going to happen. So of course, SUMA along with FCM, we are going to be doing a good deep dive into the programs and the promises that are going to be coming out of that. And no matter what happens in that federal election, we know that we have to work with the government of the day and the opposition of the day. And I know that in the past, in the work that I've done, my experience, that just happens. You have to be optimistic about that. You have to build those relationships because, again, as I said, it's relationship building. Last week, we were at the FCM meetings. We met with leadership of all of the federal parties and had really good conversations with them. And it's really interesting to know everyone listened, took notes. So we need to continue those discussions with them. We need to continue working with our government here in Saskatchewan and the opposition. So when those decisions are getting made, Chris, they think about how is this going to affect our municipalities in the province, and not only how is it going to affect, but maybe we should have those conversations with SUMA before we make the decisions. That would be something that if I had the second, wish, I would wish for that the first phone call when they're anticipating policy changes or law changes is to SUMA and to our sister organization, SARM, so that they actually understand what's going on the grassroots of our province.
President Goulden, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me for the last half hour and talking about municipalities in the province of Saskatchewan. I can imagine that this is not going to be the last conversation you and I have, and I look forward to seeing you in person again in Saskatoon for your 120th SUMA convention, where I'm looking forward to meeting your members, your new members, your re-elected members, and some old faces that I haven't seen in a while. So thank you so much for sitting down with me and talking about the last 12 months and looking towards 2025. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Chris. I always look forward to my visit with you, and I look forward to having you back in Saskatchewan.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Municipal Affairs Year in Review. Now, we are closing in to our final episode of 2024, and we have a big guest to sit down with at that episode. So, if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this, or if you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to hit that subscribe button today. It helps us grow and helps us to continue bringing you more great content like you heard today. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we'll be back tomorrow